So a lot of articles out this week about the real estate market. You know, we're coming up upon the end of the summer. You know, kids starting to go back to school. A lot of people are bears, and there's some bulls on what's happening with our real estate market. Is it going to keep going like it is? Is there things to worry about? I kind of sit. From my position, I sit in a place where everything right now looks like sunshine and rainbows, but I'm still a little skeptical about what's behind that and the principles of the market. You'll see articles that almost contradict each other. Real estate market doing so great, but we've got the lowest percentage of home ownership that we've seen in a long time, and people will say, well, how can that happen? And there's a lot of investor activity, people buying second homes, people buying multiple homes. But I wanted to kind of get you guys' take on it. With all the articles out there right now, Arnie, what do you guys think is happening with the market? Where do you think the market's going to be? What's your take on the articles that say it's great, and then some that say be skeptical?
Well, I think as far as foreclosures being down, I think that is true. However, our area happens to be, I think, one of the top 3 in the country as far as foreclosures.
We still have a lot.
Still have top 3 in the country as far as foreclosures are concerned. So some of that, I think, was delayed. Actually, I heard a situation just the other day that it took 10 years for this house to get foreclosed on, but they waited for the market to come back. So they waited for the market to come back, so now the bank's putting it on the market, so it's kind of crazy. But I just think that really, as far as the sustainability of everything, really depends on jobs. And at the end of the day, if the job growth, although not spiking, is sustainable growth, then you're going to see the market be okay.
What about you, David? Think the same thing?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Everyone's situation is different.
You don't disagree with your dad?
That's a shock. That's the first.
I think it comes down to are you a person that's going to buy a house and live in it for the next 10 years? In which case you're going to be
fine.
Completely fine. I mean, probably better than fine. Or are you a person that's looking to buy an investment property and flip it in 2 years? I mean, I don't know. There's completely different scenarios that everybody has to go through their goals and their visions to see, what they're expecting out of this. But as it still stands, buying and living in a home for the long term is going to be a good investment for you.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it really does depend on the person's needs. And if they're buying, I think anytime you're telling someone to buy longer cycles, if you're saying, I'm going to buy and live there for 7 to 10 years, you're almost always going to be fine because the cycles don't last that long. You're usually dealing with 2 or 3 years of a bad cycle, and the same thing, 2 or 3 years of a great cycle, and then some average stuff.
Absolutely.
So Sean, what are you seeing? What's your take on what's going on at your predictions with housing?
Yeah. Well, especially with my business, when the bad articles were coming out and it was all doom and gloom, I was relatively happy because
Right, because that's what you're coming up with short sales, foreclosures, and right.
Short sales have dropped, foreclosures have dropped, bankruptcy has dropped. All those numbers have gone down for my business. But in the bad times, I didn't necessarily believe all the articles that said doom and gloom. Now that we're starting to get to the good times, I don't necessarily believe all the articles
about sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sort of in the middle. I think the job indicators are really good indicator at the same time. Although we're adding jobs and maybe the unemployment rate's going down, the salaries of the jobs that we're getting are not equal to the salaries of the job that we lost. They're less. So even though more people are being employed, which is a good thing,
they're being employed at lower wages.
They're being employed at lower wages.
It's a good point to make. And obviously, I think everyone knows the election's going to have some interesting, conversations about how it'll impact the economy and real estate. And people tend to have, no matter what candidate they support, no matter what side of the fence they're on, people tend to have, some hesitancy when there's an election on the horizon.
That said, Andrew, you missed last week. We actually had stats about the history of rates and the payments based on median incomes, so median prices out there. And we're in a level now in the 2010s of about 4% average rate. Okay, and
right.
People were complaining a little bit that rates are now in the fours. The other day,
right.
And so yet in the 2000s the average rate was mid-6s, And then, I don't remember the 90s, but in the 80s, the average rate was in the 12s.
Yeah.
And so,
And
we're
I
still in
think
the best
people's-
times ever.
Yeah, it's still fantastic right now. I think it's just like anything. It's always potential that I think people write articles about what's going to happen, what's the future, and if rates go up, and so we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk about some smoking hot deals. We're going to keep talking about what the real estate market's doing. Talk about some news articles as well as answer some email questions after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show.